A triangular-shaped garden formed a right triangle. Its hypotenuse was 34 feet and one of its sides was 14 feet longer than the other. How long were the sides of the garden? You need to know that a right triangle has a formula called Pythagorean theorem, where the legs of the triangle, which we'll represent by A and B, if you square the legs and add them together, you get the square of what they call the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle. In this case, the hypotenuse is given to us. It's 34 feet. So we have to figure out what the other sides are. One of the sides is 15 feet longer than the other one, so let's call one of them A, and B is 15 feet longer, which is A plus 15, or 14 feet longer, A plus 14. All right, so we're going to take one leg, which is A, and square it, plus the other leg, which is A plus 14, and square it, and that will give us C squared, which is 34 squared. Now we're going to use our tools to factor out the A plus 14 squared. We're going to multiply it out and get A squared plus 28A plus 196 equals 34 squared, which is 1156. Okay, now that gives us 2A squared plus 28A, and then you can decide, do you want to use the quadratic formula, or do you want to use the completing the square, or what do you want to use? Let's set this to 0 and then decide. So we have 196 minus 1,156, and that's going to equal a negative 960. So what I just did was I subtracted 1,156 from both sides so that I had 0 on my right side. Now we can see that there is a common factor of 2 in this equation, so we're going to divide everything by 2 on both sides, and we get A squared plus 14A plus 480 equals 0, and that's a minus. And notice that 0 divided by 2 is 0. So now we have to factor out the A squared plus 14A minus 480. We either need to factor it out, or use the quadratic formula, or use completing the square. I'm going to factor it, and so I need two numbers that multiply to give me negative 480 and add to give me 14. And I know that those two numbers are negative 30 and 16. If you multiply this, you get negative 480, and if you add it, you get, positive 30 and negative 16, so that you get positive 14 when you add them. Okay, so then this is not a grouping problem. I don't have a number along with my A squared term other than 1. So all I have to do is write down two parentheses like this. A is going to be at the beginning, so that when we multiply the A's, we get A squared, and then we just write down the two numbers we found. Okay, so far so good. Now all we have to do is solve for A, and so this equation has two solutions. We find those because A plus 30 has to equal 0 in order for this equation to equal 0, or A minus 16 has to equal 0. So we subtract 30 from both sides and we get A equals negative 30, or we add 16 and we get A equals 16. So which of these is the correct solution? Well, it can't be a negative number. There's no such thing as a negative length. So we find that A equals 16. And a plus 14 is 16 plus 14, which is going to be 30. And you can check that by using your formula again, which says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And when we do that calculation, we see that it does actually fit. So we know for a fact that one side is 16 feet and the other side is 30 feet.